Hello and welcome to the Publicly Challenged Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Oswald, and I hope you join me on my quest for knowledge to become a better public land hunter, angler, and forager. Stick with this and who knows, maybe we will learn something together. All right, real quick before we get started on the show, I'm just going to talk about Treeline Academy. You've heard me say it. I can't even tell you how many times. Mark Livesey is treelineacademy.net. That's treelineacademy.net. Sign up. Use the promo code PC2020. Save yourself $20. Can't say it enough. It's awesome, amazing, most comprehensive e-scouting course out there. Check it out for yourself. Sign up. Use promo code PC2020. And now let's get to the show. All right, so I'm sitting here and I'm talking to Keith Naylor, and some of you may know him as Spike Bull Outdoors on Instagram, and him and I have kind of been friends on social media for a while, and I've been following him and just kind of wanted to get him on and talk to him about his hunting lifestyle because it's kind of neat and all the opportunities that he does or does not get. So, Keith, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, Luke. I appreciate you having me on. Like you said, I'm Keith Naylor. I Spike Bull Outdoors on Instagram. I grew up hunting and fishing in the West. I've spent a little bit of time living back in New England and then moved back out West. So, yeah, I love the premise of your show, this publicly challenged, because certainly as a Western outdoorsman, we tend to mostly hunt public lands and all the trials and tribulations that come with it. Most of them are self-inflicted wounds, I think, but yeah, I'm excited to be on. So thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem. I just want to talk to you, and there's some things that I've learned about you over the years, and kind of wanted to get to know more about it. And so your name, let's start with that. Like Spike Bull Outdoors. I know you are the mighty Spike Bull hunter, and you're killing what is it? Tomorrow's trophies today.
Yeah, right. Harvest them before somebody else can.
So I mean, let's kind of talk about how that came into fruition and why that is, and you know why you're doing the Spike Bull thing versus trying to go after deer or a bull every year.
Hey, spikes are bulls too, okay?
Yeah. I meant a big herd bull or whatever, but
yeah. So I moved to Utah about a decade ago now. And the state of Utah, in terms of, obviously there's limited entry hunts and general hunts. Utah is, one of the few rare states that offers an over-the-counter hunt. And me being just a poor husband and father, I put in for the points, but I'm not gonna draw a limited entry tag before I die. Let's be honest. At this rate, it's horrible. So I just pick up an over-the-counter tag every year. And where I live close to a any bull unit, and I live close to a spike bull unit. And so biology-wise in Utah, what that looks like is our any bull units typically have smaller elk herd population numbers and larger amounts of private land. So it's a tough hunt, and there's a lot of guys out there vying for that kind of that diamond in the rough on these any bull units. Or you can go to a spike bull unit where the elk numbers are greater and the amount of public land is greater. So like I said, where I live, it's kind of split in half. If I take a right, I go to an any bull unit. If I take a left, I go to a spike only unit. I just have always liked the left side of the highway better. So I picked up a spike unit after I moved here, or a spike tag after I moved here, got lucky, and now it's just my thing. Every year I grab that spike tag and I head up, and I've had a lot of success. Like I said, I've lived here for a decade, so that means resident hunting wise, I've been hunting for 9 years, and I think my record is I'm 8 for 9. So there was 1 year where I was sick as a dog and didn't get to tag out. But honestly, and I mean, I get it. We're just shooting spike elk, but in terms of elk hunting, I still think that's a pretty good record.
I think it is. I absolutely think it is. So how does the spike? Is it like for residents only over the counter, or is it anybody can buy an over the counter tag, or how does that work?
Yeah, it is. It's resident and non-resident. I see plenty of California and Nevada tags out there on the road while I'm hunting. Um, so yeah, it's really open to anyone. And gosh, Utah's proposing doing some even goofier things in 2021 that I think we're all hoping they don't do. But you can offer all the input you want, but
What
you're not
so
a casting vote.
what are they implementing that they're going to try and change?
Well, on these indie bull units, like I was talking about, where it's already just a ton of hunting pressure in it, and they're hard hunts. I actually, from time to time, I'll help friends out who draw or who pick up one of these indie bull tags and go and hunt. But man, I curse them. They're just so tough in terms of elk numbers and the amount of land that you can hunt if you don't have private land access. Um, so it's a tough hunt to begin with. The state has historically offered 15,000 tags, so that's a lot. And now they're going to open it up. So now they want to open it up for the indie bull units and make them unlimited. So just
So it'll
as
be
many
like
as
a Colorado basically,
yeah, as
or
many
how
as
they
they
did
can
it for a
sell.
while anyway. But yeah,
Yeah, as many as they can sell on units that are already that I guess in my opinion, my uneducated non-biological opinion are already struggling. I mean, you see it every year. You'll see guys that pull some good bulls off of these indie bull units and these over-the-counter tags, and for in my mind, nothing to be ashamed of at all. But I guarantee you they have to hunt pretty hard and have to do a ton of scouting and really put some boots on the ground in order to get it done.
so do you think it's like a revenue thing then for the state to try and just make more money off the tags, or is it, or they actually think that the population is so great that they can do that?
Oh gosh, I hate to spread more
Let's
conspiracy theory
speculate.
in 2020 or in 2020. Um, I think that's everybody's knee-jerk reaction is, yeah, it just seems like a money grab, or it's a let's just decimate the herds a little bit and see what happens kind of thing. Um, I'll say that I struggle to understand it.
Yeah.
I struggle to understand it.
That's kind of like me with the whitetail, and they claim it's and maybe it truly is in the name of CWD, but they were culling areas around me that hadn't even had that many or any confirmed cases at the time, and they're
Mhm.
buying up all this farm ground with state money and turning it into culling sites. And I remember, in the 10 years previous to that, that they were doing that you could literally drive by in the evening and you could see 30, 40, 50 deer in those fields. And somebody always hit one with a car in that area. I mean, it was just
Sure.
like you knew weekly somebody was going to hit a deer there.
Yeah.
And those seem to be the areas that they were concentrating on. And now
Right.
there's an area that they finally opened up after it was a culling site for like 4 or 5 years, and they opened up a culling site directly next to it, and they leased the property through some type of farm grant, and they turned it into a hunting area. But with that being said, only one deer was harvested there last year.
Yeah.
I mean, so that kind of tells
Yeah.
you something. It's a smaller unit, so there's I think it's only like 7 hunters at a time or something. But every time I've gone past that parking lot, that parking lot's full of hunters. So you
Hmm.
can't tell me that people aren't hunting it.
Right.
I mean, you think a blind squirrel finds a nut more than once. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's one of
That's a
those
ton
things.
of pressure.
It just seems to me that they've decimated that herd to the point
Yeah.
to where now you could say it's in the name of CWD, and I'm not saying it's not, but it seems
Hmm.
a little excessive to do that as well. So I kind of get where you're coming from as far as that aspect of it goes, for sure.
But I'll also give credit where credit's due. I know that the state employs some great wildlife biologists, and so there could be some other factors that I and trust me, that doesn't take much for me to say I don't know about in terms of um, maybe there's not enough feed. Maybe they're struggling on the winter range. I can tell you right now, 2020 has been a dry year. Um, so I think there's a lot of environmental factors out there too that might be lending itself to this. Um, but I think us as sportsmen, we get we get so sick of people in our honey holes, right? And we get so sick of watching the road hunters from the top of the mountain. And things like that, and we just feel like there's already too many people in the woods, um, and that But what's funny is I think we I think we spend the off season in this mentor mindset where we're like, man, we've got to get people into hunting, and man, we got to pass it on and pass it down. And then hunting season rolls around, and all we do is cuss how many people there are, right?
It's
So,
the double-edged
so
sword.
yeah,
It's
right.
it's
We kind of want our cake and eat it too. Like, we want to
it's
teach you to hunt, but we want you to hunt somewhere else, please.
it's kind of like the whole public land thing within itself. I mean, that within itself is a double-edged sword as well. I mean,
Yeah,
if you think about it, it's like, oh, well, the land is supposed to be in the hands of the people, not the government in the first place, taxes, all that stuff, but it's like it's already been established. It's here, so many people enjoy it. We need to just somehow preserve it, maintain it, properly manage it to where we can all get a piece of the pie and do that. So but it's still once again one of those things. Well, why are my tax dollars paying for it and I don't get to use it? Well, technically you can use it. You just got to get out there, So I totally get it. I totally get it. And the same thing with, man, it sucks to see somebody else. I hang my head sometimes at a trailhead when I'm going and the guy takes off in the same direction as I'm going, and it's like, oh man, really? You could go anywhere. Why are you going? Oh, obviously, he probably scouted just like I did and found some sign or something as
right,
well. But
right. When you pull up to the trailhead before dawn and you both sit there on Onyx or Base Map or whatever app you use, and you compare the pins that you're heading towards, it's just going to be a bad day right from the get-go.
That's and see, I never actually do that. I never try and compare. I'm just like, well, maybe I'll get out there, or if he's right behind me and I see he stops, that's fine because I'm going to keep going. Or if he's right there with me, it's like, oh, I really made a mistake now. And you try and pull that audible and go a little further or deeper, in the dark. And
Yep,
most of the time, it
yep.
never works out. But
Yeah,
but
and I
you
think that's
definitely,
and I think that's an aspect of hunting that's almost evolving. It's not so much knowing what the animals are doing, or I guess that's what it is, knowing what the animals are doing so much as knowing what the animals are going to do because of the people.
absolutely.
So, and I think that, and I honestly, I attribute that to some of my quote unquote success, even though, people will scoff at shooting a spike elk as not being incredibly successful, is that, I spend a lot of time up there and I know what the animals do when they get pressured. And so that's where I start.
Yeah.
And, and I don't have to be in the meadow on opening morning in the perfect spot set up because it's not going to play out like that.
You're going to
The
have,
opening morning here sounds like the opening volley at Valley Forge, man. I mean, it's just it's Beirut, just gunfire going off everywhere, and so you know that the elk are going to get in the saddles and in the dark timber and just start crossing as slowly as they can so that they can dodge the bullets. And so, you spend the time hiking in deep and getting into where the other people don't want to go, and every now and then, like you said, the squirrel finds them.
absolutely. That's I hunted my first public land um, whitetail shotgun tag. We don't actually even have a rifle season here in Illinois
Right.
because of density. But so it was my first one ever that I drew on public land, and I went and I didn't even get to go on opening day. I went the second day, and I could not believe the amount of gunshots nor people. I did not think that there would be that many people with a tag on that chunk of property. And I asked the
Mhm.
guy, I'm like, so I can go anywhere I want, right? And he's like, yeah, we close all the rest of the hunting down during shotgun. So there was guys going all over the place, and I'm hurrying up to get to my spot, and I'm hiking way back in there. And when I previously scouted, there was a lot of tree stands on the way in there. Not a single person went back to where I went. So I was pretty impressed with that. But I heard it was probably, I don't know, within the first hour, 17 shots all around me. And I'm
Yeah.
questioning, I'm like, I've never shot twice at a deer. I've never shot twice at a deer other than just to make sure it was down or, you know what I mean? And I've
Yep.
heard, and there were some guys, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And then it's like the reload and another
Yeah.
boom. And you could tell it was the same exact area. There wasn't two people sitting next to each other shooting two deer. And
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it, but I think it was like 17 total people I heard shots in that area, and I couldn't believe it. I was like,
Yeah.
this is the second day of this. How are these deer just not out of here? It was kind
You
of
can
crazy.
you can almost triangulate the herd, on opening morning or any given morning or evening in the hunts out here, just by where the shots are coming from. You can hear them getting closer to you, so you know the herd is on its way.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
just got to hope there's something left to shoot at by the time it gets to you.
yeah. They didn't.
We had a similar experience this year where we heard 8 shots in semi-auto fire succession, and it wasn't a 223. I don't know if it was an AR-10 308 or whatever the case may be, but I was like, I, I was a little surprised. I'm used to the bolt action, you know,
Right.
boom, boom, but this was boom, 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 boom. I just looked at my brother. We just shook our heads like, they're getting serious this year, boy.
So with that being said, can like you yourself buy two spike bolt tags for the same unit or no?
No, you can end up with more than one elk tag, but one's probably going to be antlerless. You can end up with a couple antlerless tags, I think, and then one bull tag,
So
depending on how it all plays
so
out.
that guy was really just making sure it was down then or
I
missing.
don't. And maybe it's a new tactic I haven't heard of. I try and keep up on the trends and things like that. I just haven't heard of suppressing fire in elk hunting yet. But maybe it's a thing. Maybe it's a thing.
Maybe it is.
I mean, I've been on plenty of deer drives and things like that, so maybe now it's just suppressing fire and you just push the elk by gunshots the direction you need them to go. I don't know.
Right. So did you do any mule deer hunts this year?
I did. I had a muzzleloader deer tag, and uh, for my love of hunting elk, and I don't hate mule deer. I'm a sucky mule deer hunter, and I don't know what it is. I always consider myself just a lucky hunter anyway. It just seems like I just walk up a mountain and, oh, hey, look, there's an elk. I think I'll shoot it now. But when it comes to deer, man, I do not have that luck. Um, and I've drawn several tags since I've lived here in Arizona. I actually, and I joke about this publicly on my Instagram, that I haven't killed a mule deer since the mid '90s. If
Ooh.
you can, yeah,
So it's just over the counter, huh?
since I was a kid in high school in Colorado is the last time I've killed a mule deer. So then finally this year, I think I've had 5 or 6 tags, mule deer tags, since I've moved to Utah. I finally this year finally punched a tag, and again, not a trophy, exactly what you would expect by somebody named Spikebull Outdoors. Um, but yeah, a fun little 3-point mule deer. And again, it was one of those, I walked up the mountain, he's standing right there. I determined he met the criteria for the deer I wanted to shoot, and
Meat.
it was over. And
Yeah.
I turned around and I looked at my truck, and it was 75 yards away,
That's
So
perfect. That's perfect.
it was, but yeah. So yes, I do hunt mule deer. I like mule deer. I just, for whatever it is, I don't have a mule deer brain. I got elk all day long. I just am not a great mule deer hunter.
I don't know. That's what's crazy is like when I was out in Colorado, I saw probably 1,000 times more mule deer than I did elk,
Yeah.
and and it was just like it was opening morning, first 10 minutes, saw a mule deer bigger than any mule deer I'd ever seen in my life. Not even knowing what it would even score, but just going, my God, that thing is massive and wide and tall and everything anybody would ever want out of one. And going, holy crap, I wish I had one of those tags, until I realized, learned later on that it was definitely a tag that you would have to draw where I was at. So
Yeah. Yeah, and when I was a kid, that's how Colorado was, as it was over the counter. So, we lived, growing up where we lived kind of a subsistence lifestyle. So that meat was important. Um, so yeah, I shot my first mule deer with an old bear compound bow in my front yard. But again, it was a 4-point, because everything was a 4-point in Colorado back then. Deer were big, and you didn't have to take a little one, and they were everywhere, it seemed like. But the game has definitely changed and will continue to change.
yeah, I'm sure. And I think they already, what was it, last year they put in, or 2020, I guess it was, for Southern Colorado, the herd was kind of lower numbers where they had to actually do a draw set over the counter, right? I think.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't keep up with Colorado anymore. I can barely keep my head on straight with Utah. So
So do you still hunt Arizona then, or no?
I I tag along in Arizona. I've got family down there. My brothers and stuff still live down there. So if one of them has a hunt going on and I can get some time off work, I'll go down there and tag along. I've joined my brother on some Coues deer hunts and an antelope hunt, and um, and that's where I moved up here to Utah from, was Arizona. So while I was down there, my dad and I did a mule deer hunt and a javelina hunt and things like that. But um, Arizona's a fun little state, but I think the hunting there is really tough as well.
That's one of the things eventually I'd like to get there in the whole January. I always buy the tag every year or the license every year to buy either points or an elk, try and apply for an elk tag. So
Mhm.
one of these days I'd like to actually put that tag, that license to use and do the over the counter. But it just seems like I always try and save my vacation because I've got limited amount of days to where it's like, how can I spend that many right off the bat in January to go down there and chase something? And I mean, I'm sure it would be fun, but at the same time, I'm really burning up hunting points for later on in the year, for all
Yeah,
that stuff. So,
you got to find a way to cook the books on terms of
oh,
vacation time. I
I
get
know
it.
it.
I get it. I get it. It's tough. I took almost 3 weeks back to back off this year. We had to go out to Virginia to see our little grandbaby that was born. And then I took off on that trip to Alaska. And so, yeah, I came back to work, and, and the boss was kind of like, you're here for a while, right? So, message received.
That's pretty much how everybody is at work. They're like, "Hey, where the heck you been?" It's always
Yeah,
November, Where the
yeah,
heck have you been? I've
yeah.
been around. Well,
I'm,
where?
I'm, yeah. I'm sure they're cussing me while I'm gone, but
Not
happy
here.
to see me back. So,
I don't really care.
yeah, so do I. As long as I'm living my life.
But speaking of, you made a great segue into that. Let's talk about your Alaska trip. Kind of how did it come about? Because Alaska has always always been on my bucket list of things to do, and I've kind of come to the conclusion that I believe a caribou hunt may be the easiest logistically to try and plan out
Hmm.
and do all those things. So I
Hmm.
kind of just want to get your perspective on it and how it all came about and really the details of the hunt, man.
Yeah. And I would agree with you. But also like you, just Alaska has always been a dream, and not just going up there to trophy hunt, but to live up there. A, to be away from people, but B, man, I could totally just hunt and trap and fish, and I guess I could have to figure out how to do a little bit of farming on the side to have some vegetables every now and then. But yeah, totally a dream. So. Through the power of social media, I get to bantering with this guy, um, talking about Alaska and stuff like that, and everybody's down in the dumps because of COVID. This is back in April, and he's like, "Man, why don't you come up here and just hunt with us?" A gentleman out of Fairbanks just invited me to tag along on their annual trip up the Dalton Highway. So I started looking at it, and again, I do everything on a budget because every dollar I put towards hunting is a dollar my family doesn't get, right. So I'm really, really super conscious of that. Um, and I'm like, no, maybe in 5 years it'd be great. It's in my 5 year plan. I want to get up there in 5 years. And he's like, yeah, but airfare is so cheap right now. Like, you really might want to think about this. It's, there's no float planes, no boats or anything involved. It's we drive up and hunt along the Dalton Highway. And I was like, all right. So it got the wheel spinning, and I started looking at tag prices, and I'm like, okay, not impossible. But then I looked at airfare, and the round trip airfare from Vegas to Fairbanks was less than $300 at the time. And so now I'm like, I could almost pull this trip off for less than $1,500.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so I'm like, I think I got to do this. And I was having, you know, uh, I was having a human experience and just kind of down in the dumps, and was like, went to my wife and said, "Look, I got offered to go on this trip. I've kind of priced it out. This is about what I'm looking at. What are your thoughts?" And she's awesome. She's like, "Do you think we can do it?" I said, "Um, "Yeah, you know, gonna have to put in a little extra hustle, but we can do it." She said, "Okay." So as soon as she said, "Okay," but now we've got COVID going on, and I don't know. They had just canceled the spring bear hunts and everything, so nobody could even go to Alaska, non-resident. So we're trying to put plans together, but nobody's got any idea of how it's all going to play out. And we have to wait until the hunt starts in August, and we have to wait until July 1st until the new hunting regs come out to even see if this thing's going to be a green light. So I buy my airplane ticket because of COVID, it's totally refundable regardless. So I'm like, okay, that's safe. So I buy the airline ticket. Now we're just waiting to see if the hunt comes together. July 1st rolls around and Alaska doesn't say anything about no non-residents. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna buy a tag. Are you guys sure it's cool if I come up? Yep, not a problem. So buy the tags and start putting plans together. Things I did to stay on budget, where there were some items of gear I didn't have, like a decent sleeping bag and I've got a negative 35-degree bag that weighs 200 pounds because I'm a wuss like that, and a nice gun case for flying with and stuff like that. So I borrowed some gear, and people were more than willing to help out, and yep. So I did that to stay under budget, and so yeah, I went. And so the whole experience was land in Fairbanks. They've got it all regimented out to this time we need to do this time we need to do that. We're driving this day, we'll hike in that night. So they had a really great plan put together. And again, it's their annual trip anyway, so they're used to it, and they're residents, so they get to hunt caribou like crazy and live that dream. But I'm sorry, I'm going all over the place.
It's awesome. So,
this is what I do.
Quick question. Just I want to interject. Was it planned to be a rifle hunt, or was it planned to be archery initially?
For me, it was always planned to be a rifle hunt because
Okay.
I am not an archery hunter. It's something I'm just picking up this year. So I think I had a bow for a couple of months and obviously just didn't feel comfortable going in the field with it. So to hunt along the Dalton Highway up there, and that's the road that runs, the ice haul, or the ice road truckers road that runs from Prudhoe Bay all the way down to Fairbanks. To hunt along that corridor within 5 miles of the roadway is archery only, because they don't want you poking a hole in their fancy pipeline. So
Right.
you have to hike 5 miles and then your rifle hunt begins. So knowing I was coming out of state, the guys were great. They really made it an effort, or they really put the focus on me to help me tag out. So where was I going with that?
So they put a focus on you. So they put a focus on you, and you guys hiked in.
Yeah. So we landed in Fairbanks, got our stuff together. They went through my whole pack and laughed at all the crap that I overpacked, trimmed me down, and shaved some weight off for me. And then so we packed up and we loaded the next day. It's like an 8-hour drive to get over Adigan Pass and to get into the hunting, the area we were hunting. And yeah, that was it. You just start walking in. You don't start walking in. So you have this idea of what hunting in Alaska is going to be like. You expect a ton of moisture and everything's going to be wet and it's going to be cold and there's going to be a ton of bugs. You have this idea in your mind, but you really don't know what you don't know, right? So, I'm asking a ton of questions, but I can't get my head around what I'm about to experience. But the hike. I'm doing a crappy job of telling the story.
Let's ask. So was it, because I've got questions too, so it'll kind of help you with this. But so was it barren ground? I mean, and like very loamy. I picture it kind of being like a lichen mossy, where you step on it and your foot kind of sinks in a little bit,
Yeah.
and just kind of a real loamy soil. Is that kind of an accurate description of it?
Yeah, it really is. So we started out just at the base of an area called Adigan Pass, and so it's that north slope of the Brooks Range that everybody knows and loves in Alaska. So that was kind of mountainous, and we were trying to chase mountain caribou in that area. But the area that we started out in, there was just nothing,
barren ground.
Right, barren ground, but just no caribou. There was a ton of grizzly sign all over the place. So of course, me as a flatlander was a little sketched out by that. But I'm in Alaska, so I totally expect it. But there just was nothing there. So we jumped back in the truck and drove further down the Dalton out onto the official, like, this is tundra. We saw muskox, we saw grizzly bear, the full on you're in the tundra Alaska experience. But yeah, that's exactly how the ground is like. Like, I did weighted pack hikes and a ton of training in the gym to get ready for the trip because I didn't want to be the sucky guy on the trip that was whining and dogging out of breath. So I felt like I was in pretty good shape. But yeah, that tundra is tough to walk on. It really is. Your foot is never not articulating.
Yeah.
It's constantly moving and flexing. And every step you take, yeah, you're sinking about 6 inches every time, and it's mushy, and your feet are constantly wet, and it's tough. It's tough. I'm not gonna lie.
And that's
Like,
how I imagined it. I really did. Like in my head, that's how I imagined it. And I don't know if it's just because I've, looked into it so much, or people I've talked
yeah,
to them, they've said the same thing, but that's truly how I imagined it for some reason. Like you said, I don't know how you would actually prepare for that other than just embrace the suck and go with it.
yeah, and that's exactly what it was. Like, to look at it, it looks like just Kansas plains, just low rolling hills. And I'm like, oh, I've got this 5 miles, no problem. About the first mile in, I'm like, with a 40-pound pack on your back as you're carrying your whole campground on your bag, and then your gun and everything else. The first mile in, I was like, I'm in for a little bit of a challenge. This is going to be good. So it was good. To be honest, mentally, I needed that. I needed that challenge, and I needed that adventure. And for what was going on in my life at the time, it was perfect. I needed that struggle. Um, but then, so we get to the next spot that we want to hunt. We walk out the 5 miles, and bam, just like my stupid spike hunting adventures, I walk up the mountain. There's an elk. I walk 5 miles across the tundra. We get to this little lake, and bam, there's a
There's a
really
herd,
decent
huh?
caribou. No, it wasn't even a herd. It was just a bull. It was just a bull, and it was a good bull. So I was like, I'm just gonna shoot that one. you know, we're here,
Yeah.
we're done. So yeah, that was it. It was funny. Caribou, you know, they don't act like elk. They don't act like mule deer, and they're funny. We had, as we drove up the Dalton, we had watched some different bulls, and I got to watch my buddy try and put some stalks on with his bow. Um, and they're just as skittish as anything, but they're in this constant state of moving, right? They're constantly migrating. They just never stop. But even when they do stop, they'll sit there and they'll eat for a second, but all of a sudden the mosquitoes will piss them off, and they'll just take off running. And so all of a sudden you're like, where'd they go? But it's funny because if you watch them enough, like, they'll just take off. They'll run miles away, but you can still see them because it's all flat land. Well, then they get to this point and they're like, wait, why am I running? And then all of a sudden they'll start working their way right back to where they were, because they're like, I was eating there and that was good, so I'm going to go back over there. So
That's cool.
they're this amazing animal to watch, and they're just a beautiful, not like a deer, not like an elk. It's almost a velvety fur that time of year, and I'm sure it's different when they winter up. But with that summer fur, man, it was a soft velvety fur. I wish I could have kept it, but trying to keep everything on a budget, I didn't even bring the cape home. I was resigned to just bringing the horns home, and that's what I did. So
Yeah. So just the horns, or did you bring the whole skull?
just the horns,
Just
just
the
the horns,
horns.
just yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that, I committed when I went up there. I knew I could, even going up there, that I couldn't afford the taxidrmy when I got home. Um, so
I
the real, and I didn't think I was
I
gonna
have never mounted a deer, to be honest. I've done Euro mounts, and
right.
that's all I've ever done. And it's not so much even that, but it's like I could really spend that money on other things. And I mean, I know guys that every deer they kill every year they get it mounted, and I've got
Yeah,
a buddy that's got like 26 mounts. I
yeah.
mean, it's crazy, but if that's what they're into, that's fine. But
Right, right, right,
I mean,
right.
it's everybody's thing. But no, it's
Right.
cool
It's
though that you
everybody's
still
budget.
got the
If that's their
experience.
budget, that's
I
good.
mean, you've got pictures, you've got the memories, which I'm
Yeah.
sure are just etched into your mind forever. I mean, it's got to be
Well, you say
amazing.
that, but at my age, every day I lose a little more. No,
There,
I do. It's a great experience, and I kept an okay journal while I was up there. So I've actually started trying to put all that together and kind of write a story about it. Um, Even if I never do anything about it, just so that somebody can read it to me in the nursing home one day.
I'll post
Um,
it. I'll post it on the website. I will. I will.
Appreciate
I'm looking for content. I'll put it on the blog for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that the gentleman that took me up there, that he's looking to do the same, and he keeps pushing me to ride it, but I'm lazy and busy with family, so I never get to it. Um, yeah, it was a great experience, and I can tell you that I went from door to door, Alaska and back, the full caribou adventure, $1,500.
That's
You
pretty
know,
awesome.
I think it's not bad. I think it's amazing. It was a great DIY experience, which for me, I would enjoy more than going with a fully guided
Oh, yeah. No,
know,
I get
hunt.
it.
Which, don't get me wrong, I I do need the whole Alaskan like bush plane or float plane experience. I do need that, but this definitely scratched an itch on a budget, and I got a good bull. I'd love to get it mounted, but the reality is, I thought I was just going to shoot a dink. I didn't know what I was in for. you
And you
know,
never do till you get there, right? And it's that
Hunting with
moment.
a
But
couple of
yeah,
guys I've never even actually shaken hands with. But I've taken a couple of opportunities like this now through social media to kind of step out, meet people, and go on adventures that I probably wouldn't normally do. And I think that's almost the about the only redeeming value that's left to social media, right?
there's. I tell you what, there definitely is. There's a lot of negatives, a lot of hate. I see it more on Facebook than Instagram, and I think it's just because a picture speaks more volumes than actual words that people put on the page, and most people look at that. So it's not as much. I'd say there's not as much hate or animosity towards somebody, or just negative comments, and just there's definitely a lot of toxicity. And I don't spend a whole lot of time on Facebook, but I
Yeah.
think Instagram, the pictures kind of speak more volumes than the actual words that the people write on it. So it's
I
easier
think
for
that's the
people.
difference. I think that's always been the difference between the two platforms, more
Yeah,
where Instagram more geared towards just showing your picture and sharing your story in pictures. Yes, you can add some commentary to it, but where Facebook is really kind of the, hey, here's my picture, but look what I got to say about it too.
right. Yeah,
So
yeah. And I'll agree with you on that. But I've met some cool people. I've met guys like you, and we finally actually get to sit down and talk. So that's uh, pretty cool. I always said if I ever got to go out to Utah and go to the Western Expo, but I obviously that's not happening this year.
yeah,
Once
not this
once
year.
again,
Yeah.
so that sucks. But I told you I'd buy you dinner if we were out there. But
And I was really looking forward to that Arby's sandwich too. No, yeah, and I love going to Hunt Expo just for that. You meet a lot of cool people. You do a lot of networking. You see a lot of really cool things that either you can or can't afford. A lot of
right.
a lot of hunting adventures that you can live vicariously through. But it really is. It's a good time up there. It's a good platform. It's a ton of fun. And I know that there's obviously various other shows throughout the country, held throughout the year. But
That's
for
the one I
whatever
was
reason,
looking forward to, though.
yeah,
So
for whatever reason,
yeah,
that Western Hunt Expo in Salt Lake City really seems to draw a good crowd. And it's a ton of fun.
yeah. So there's one more thing I want to ask you about.
Hmm.
Actually, what's the actual cost of a tag then for a caribou tag? I mean, does that change, or is it pretty much the same for a non-resident throughout all the different regions or wherever you buy it for the state? I'm not even sure how
Yeah,
that works.
I think it's the same. I know that they have kind of a draw system as well as an over the counter. And so I went on an over the counter adventure. And I think the tag, I'm going to be close, but maybe not accurate. I think the tag was 600 and the license was 250, or it's the tag was 650 and the license was 200.
Okay.
So so that obviously was the bulk of my cost, and you kind of expect that being a non-resident hunter. But
Right.
as a caribou, there are certain big game species in Alaska where you're required to hire a guide. Caribou is not one of them. So, I won't say that it's a poor man's Alaska adventure, but it's a really good way if you need to scratch that Alaska itch to
Yeah.
go do it on a crazy cool animal. And it's something that logistically wise, yeah, you could do it yourself. We saw plenty of guys in U-Haul trucks rented out of Fairbanks driving up and down the road looking for caribou. So I assumed those were out of staters who flew into
Yeah.
Fairbanks, grabbed a U-Haul because I guess the law is you can't, or I guess the rule is you can't take a rental car up the Dalton Highway. So they just picked up U-Hauls and driving U-Haul box trucks.
I've seen it where they have rental trucks. Because I've looked into it a little bit, and there's places that will rent you a 4x4 truck
Sure.
to go out there and do that, or a 4x4 van or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yep.
How did you get the meat home? I mean, what was the logistics for that? Do you just pay the extra airfare and you bring a cooler with you and your gear was in it, or how?
Nope.
Kind of explain
So
that.
so what I did, and the way these guys had their hunt planned out was we were going to hunt for 3 days, come hell or high water, and then that left us a day to process, a day to freeze, and then I flew. So that's exactly what we did. We got in on Friday. On Saturday, we spent the whole day processing the caribou. We ran to Walmart and bought 2 ice chests. We put the caribou in the freezer and let it start freezing and getting hard. We threw it in the ice chest, bagged it up, and you flew it home as extra baggage. So 2 ice chests and a box with the antlers in it is what I had to fly home. So my baggage fees were an extra $200
Oh, that's not
because
bad.
of that. It's not awful.
No.
And to be honest, I thought everything had to be under 50 pounds, but the gate agent actually said, no, once you buy the extra bag, you can go up to 100. So I
Oh,
really could have got away with one cooler, but not knowing then what I know now, 2 coolers home, 100 pounds of meat, and my antlers.
that's not
Like I
bad.
think, I think a lot of guys go up there too, understanding that you have to strip the velvet off, and so you come home with this bloody red pair of antlers. I didn't have to do that. I used that product, Velvalock.
Hmm.
I actually brought a couple bottles with me, and as soon as we got the antlers back to the truck, I sprayed them down with the Velvalock to get that velvet to start drying, and then we just wrapped it with some pool noodles and some packing foam, shrink wrapped them, put them in a box, and flew them home.
That's pretty cool. So,
Yeah, it just worked.
did you have to inject anything on the inside or just spray it on the outside?
No, you just spray that on the outside, and let it dry, and it did an amazing job. Velvet
So,
held nicely.
so what'd you have to do when you got home as far as care on them? Anything, or like hair dry them to dry it
Yep.
further? Or?
Yeah, I took a mild dish detergent to it, and I don't know that would be recommended by the company, but it had an odor to it,
Like a
and
formaldehyde odor?
no, no, kind of like a more like a dried blood odor,
Okay.
as well as kind of an oily film to it. And of course, it pulls all that blood out to the velvet, so your hands would get dirty anytime you touched it. So I cleaned it off with a really mild dish detergent, and then I'm a geek and I live in a house full of girls, so I took my wife's blow dryer and my beard brush and kind of blew dry the velvet and kind of fluffed it up. But it worked. It worked good. It looks great. So yeah,
So, what are your plans with them then? You gonna put them on like like a wall mount or something, or what are you gonna do with them?
yeah. I think that's just the old. Well, yeah, just a skull plate, base
Yeah.
plate right there. I think is all I'm going to do with them. Unfortunately, they're they're kind of, in order to fly them home. I don't know how to explain this over the air. We cut the skull cap off like you would if you were going to mount it, but then we cut that in half so that you could take the antlers and kind of juxtapose them
Hmm.
inside of each other to condense the size rather than having a 30-inch spread. You can
Right.
set them inside each other and keep it smaller. Um, so we did that. So I've got the skull plate in two places. And so right now I've just got it screwed onto a board, and I'm still trying to figure out what my artistic design is going to be. But yeah, I'll do something. I think the wife will let me hang it in the house if I'm lucky. I don't know how many pairs of shoes I'm going to have to buy in order to facilitate that, but whatever it takes.
So let me ask you this before you mount it: have you, or are you going to probably take a nap and hold on to them as you take that nap, and
Oh man,
hopefully dream of the whole experience
there's
all over?
there's really not a time I don't walk into the garage that I don't look at them and relive it. It really was a special opportunity for me. Like we talked about budget before, Alaska was something I never. I always dreamed it would happen, but honestly, never even took one step towards making it happen until
Yeah.
all of a sudden it was like dude, you can totally do this. Just do it. So taking that opportunity, and at this time in my life, it meant everything to me. And I think we know as sportsmen what spending time in the field does for our mental health, right?
Oh,
Kind of
yeah.
refills that tank and gives us that, hopefully, enough juice to get us through the long winter and up until next hunting season. It kind of buys us that mental health, and that's absolutely what this trip did. Um, for me, you just, as I struggled before, I can't put it all in words. It was all so dynamic and also big, and Alaska was everything I dreamed it would be. It was this opportunity to get completely into wilderness. Living out west, things are big. There's wide open spaces, yeah, but I can hike to any road in a day. I'm going to end up somewhere. I'll be all right. I did not have that feeling in Alaska. I truly felt like, man, if I kept walking in this direction, I'm probably never going to get found. And so that thing that you want to feel about Alaska, that smallness, that insignificant speck in this big world, I was able to feel finally in my heart and in my soul. And so, yeah, man, it was so good. And if somebody's listening to this and thinking, man, $1,500, I can make it happen, it might not be that much for you, but it's not going to be that much more.
Yeah.
So if you can swing it within your means, man, do it. And if you've got, if you need gear advice or recommendations, give me a call. Be glad to talk to you about it, um, and offer what I know. Obviously, it's just one trip experience, but it's something.
So let's talk about that then, real quick.
Mhm.
Just kind of, what are some of the things that you would definitely do different as far as gear, and what were some serious mistakes or something that you learned as far as performance or gear didn't do what you needed it to do?
Yeah, I had. Okay, obviously going up there and being so remote, your gear cannot fail. It has to perform as advertised. There's just no room for crappy engineering. It's got to do what the box says it'll do. So I really worried about that. But I also surrounded myself with good gear. The only thing I do differently is I happen to own a really big spotting scope. It's a big Swarovski
Hmm.
spotting scope.
Yeah, I
Uh,
know. I'm very familiar with that spotting scope. It's a very nice one.
yeah, it is. Uh, but it was really overkill, and I was in great shape. I wasn't in good enough shape, and pounds and ounces started to matter. So my spotting scope was and tripod combination was too big. Um, and to be honest, especially hunting up there in the tundra, you can see so far. A good pair of binos would do you, and probably a lesser tripod. I like to glass off of a tripod just for stability reasons. But
What would you do then? Like 12 by 50, or are you talking like
Mhm.
15 by something for binos?
No, I think 12s would be fine. I think you're going to know or not know, through 12s you know, at a mile or two, whether it's worth the walk or not. Um, and I know that was my case. We were able to tell. We could tell by the palms that it was a, it was a bull, because
Yeah.
the young bulls and the females both have antlers, so it can really screw you up. You spend a lot of time looking at caribou genitalia trying to decide what you're looking at, but you can tell from a distance whether it's worth a walk or not. So yeah, I would do that, or even just a smaller spotter would do you. I know that things are probably different in sheep country, or maybe even on a moose hunt where you know where it's just a different hunt. There's a lot more trees involved and things like that. But for
So,
caribou, gosh, you could see
um,
them miles off.
would you is the tag for like a bull only, or is it like an either sex tag to where you can take, I don't even know what you call it, as a cow, or what is it for
Yeah, I think it is a
for a
cow for a
female?
caribou. Yeah, I don't think it's doe. I think it's definitely a cow for caribou, and people in Alaska right now are cringing and calling me an idiot. That's fine. Um, I think it is a cow caribou, but for non-residents, it's a bull only. Obviously,
Okay.
that depends on the hunt unit, but for what I looked at, it seemed like most non-residents, you are allowed one bull.
Okay. So one more thing I got to ask you, and that's I think I saw at one point back in the day you used to be a lawman,
Yeah.
and you left this out in the introduction, but there's something kind of unique. Maybe a lot of people don't know about you, but you were actually security detail for
Oh,
for Katie Couric. Is that correct?
yeah. And man, I don't know how long it's been since I've quote unquote bragged about that, but yeah, um, I was in law enforcement, and gosh, what was it, 2005, 2006, when Hurricane Katrina hit down south.
Yeah.
Um, a buddy of mine who was also a law enforcement officer happened to have some connections in the security world, and so my lieutenant and I jumped on a opportunity to go down there and do security for NBC News, and we didn't know what we were getting into. Gosh, what a soup sandwich the whole trip was. Um, but yeah, I ended up getting to spend some time being Katie Couric's security detail, and being just off camera the whole time she's filming the Today Show, and gosh, half your listeners are probably scratching their heads, going, "Who is Katie Couric?" But no, so that was a cool experience. But yeah, it was weird. Like, um, people from New Hampshire being in the South wasn't a good mix anyway, because apparently the Civil War is still going on. But yeah, we flew into where in Florida, somewhere over on the east of Florida. I can't remember. Um, I'm sorry, in the western panhandle of Florida. Um, and we went to get the rental car, and the guy's like, "Yeah, I got a car for you. It's got an eighth of a tank of gas, and there's no gas stations around that have any gas, but here you go."
Yeah.
So we were like, crap. So we took it, and we found the only gas station on Martin Luther King Boulevard selling gas. Um, and actually, we were met at the pumps by a very giant gentleman with a sawed-off double-barrel shotgun controlling the pumps. So, anyways, we bought his gas and we drove on into Biloxi, Mississippi. And we actually followed the National Guard or the Army Corps of Engineers, I guess it was rather, as they were plowing the roads to get into Biloxi, Mississippi. And man, it was destroyed. It was a lot of destruction. It was a very humbling experience. But really met some amazing people. Had a good experience doing security for NBC, and meeting Katie Couric, great lady. I'll tell you, we had one opportunity where we were kind of established, just kind of standing around one day, and this poor little lady comes pushing past us with a little metal wheeled cart, and she's just muttering to herself, "I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do." And so I go out and I talk to her, and I'm like, "Can we help you with something?" And she's like, and she opens this bag in her metal cart, and it's just full of cash.
Okay.
And yeah, yeah. She goes, "I keep all my money in a mattress." And she said, "This hurricane's come through. It's destroyed my house. So I want to put this money in the bank, but the bank's gone too. I don't know what to do."
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, yeah, it was really humbling. It was incredibly sweet, to find somebody that keeps money in their mattress. Um, but then, yeah, she really was. She had nowhere to go, so I had to call the police for her, and so that they could help get her some provisions and get her taken care of. But it, I, I had never experienced that level of destruction, or that level of having people's lives uprooted and destroyed. So it was really humbling for me. It was a really good opportunity. I was glad I took it. Aside from getting to do cool stuff, but
Your wife
yeah.
ever get jealous when you go and have a cup of coffee and meet up with Katie?
No, yeah, yeah. No, that we didn't exchange phone numbers. That's for sure. Yeah, yeah, but nonetheless, yeah.
No, that's pretty cool. I just wanted to throw that out there. I know you always screw
It is a
around. If
funny
people
story.
if people don't know you and they start finding you on social or something like that, they're gonna realize you mess with a lot of people, messing around. Fun, all fun and
Yeah.
games. But so So I thought
every
I'd just throw that in there.
target on the back. That's for sure. Including it's fine. Yeah. Look at my profile now, and again, tomorrow's my birthday. I turned 44. Yeah, I've done a lot of random stuff in my life. I've had some good opportunities. I've taken some chances. I've kind of lived and experienced. It's been a fun ride, but I'm definitely I'm as average Joe as they come, especially in the hunting community. I know I talk about going to Alaska and things like that, but it's just, aside from that, I don't do a ton of out of state hunting. I can't afford that stuff. So I make the most of it, but it really is, it's my saving grace, in terms of mental health and things that I'm passionate about.
No, definitely. I mean, it's the same for me. I mean, I don't drink. I don't, or anymore, I should say. And there's a lot of things I don't do, and I don't really have a whole lot of outlets. And I truly believe that nature has become that outlet, that reset, that mental, just cleansing, that therapy that so many of us probably desperately need and have probably turned to other things, in order
Right.
to get that same experience. And, I think it's amazing what it can do for people. So I totally get that, and
Yeah.
hopefully everybody else does too. Keith, before we go though, tell people one more time where they can find you, follow you, and be your friend, just like I became.
Gosh, and I feel bad. I keep thinking about the number of subscribers you're going to lose after this, and I really
Well, I
apologize.
think it's mostly because of the gym selfies. I gotta say that you probably put more gym selfies up than Josh Bomar does. But
I know, and that's
in
the
defense
thing
though, that's because Josh has a photographer and isn't taking selfies. So
yeah, I like to post those to make other men feel good about themselves and where they're at in life. Um,
oh, I thought it was
I'm
just
not
to
sure that
shame me. Shame me.
gosh, and that's kind of my saving grace. Every time I go to the gym, I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm not the biggest. I can't lift as much as that guy. Look at that girl's bench pressing more than I am. That's fabulous. I'm like, what am I doing here? But the reality is, I still get my butt up and I go. So I hang my hat on that I've made it a routine. I'm doing something,
Absolutely.
and it's a good something. It's a
I
good
think
something.
I think you've actually made some gains and some physical strides forward in the time that I've seen your first gym selfies to now. So there's something to be proud of there. And on top of it, not only that, I think you doing that also gets other people to hold you. It seems like you got a group that holds each other accountable. So that's kind of good.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've gotten some feedback like that too, like, hey, good for you. And I think, and that helps me, and I hope it helps them, because reality is it really is important. And I think we see that obviously this year, how much nutrition and a strong immune system, and just a healthy body are paying the most dividends
I'm
right
not going to
now.
lie.
So,
I probably gained the COVID-15. I'm one of those people right now,
well,
but
me too. I'm post hunting and I'm going into hibernation mode now. So yeah,
yeah.
it's just time to pack on the weight at this point.
But like I said, so Spike Bowl Outdoors, right?
Yep, on
And
Instagram, Spike
on
Bullet.
Instagram, it used to be the Outlaw Keith James, but that's no longer
Yeah,
existent. So
I don't know. I'm not outlaw. I'm not outlaw like. I don't know why I started out with that. That was goofy. but then, but then that Spike Bull fits me so well is also goofy, right? I mean, who prides themselves on shooting baby elk?
I
I
think it's
do,
pretty
because at
cool.
least I get to get out and hunt elk.
I don't judge. I don't judge. I haven't even killed an elk. So would it be, here's my question. How many people do you see come from out of state, like far? I'm talking Illinois, to come and kill a spike bull. Probably not too many, huh?
Not too much, but you know what? You want to go walk in the woods with me? Let's go.
All right, I might have to take you up on that for sure.
Gladly.
All right, man. But
Glad.
it's been good. Good talking to you, and I hope you have a good night.
Thanks for your time.
Yep, you too. Have a good one. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the Publicly Challenged podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please subscribe on whatever platform it is you're listening to. Also, if you could leave a review, that would help us out. And you can check us out on Instagram or at publiclychallenged.com. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the show.